This beginning segment isn't gonna make a lot of sense once I change the title and thumbnail of the video around a month from now. I know this is going to spoil my 2024 movie ranking, but I just want to run a little experiment right now. Comment down below, right now, in your opinion, what is the best animated movie of 2024? Maybe your pick is the popular choice of Wild Robot or Inside Out 2, or Wallace and Gromit if you're a regular Netflix user. If you branch out to watch indie animated movies, you might have picked Memoir of a Snail or Flow, which won the Golden Globes, surprisingly. You might have also picked Sirocco in the Kingdom of Winds, or The Glassworker, or Chicken for Linda. Transformers 1 or Ultraman Rising might have been your pick if you're more attached to those franchises. If you're partial to anime, Look Back was probably your go-to answer. Or even the new Spy X Family movie that won a ton of people's hearts, even if they weren't fans already. All of these are incredible picks for Best of the Year, and I would not disagree with any of you on those. However, there is one movie that I want to bring into this discussion, and that movie is... The Colors Within was my most anticipated movie of 2024, and probably my most anticipated movie of all time. It being by the legendary trio of Naoko Yamada, Reiko Yoshida, and Kensuke Ushio, the same three behind two of my favorite movies, A Silent Voice and Liz and the Bluebird. Obviously, I was super excited, and trailer after trailer, the movie looked incredible. This looked like it had a decent shot of being my favorite of the year, and probably one of my favorites of the decade so far, and after finally watching it, I am pleased to inform you, dear viewer, it was one of the best movies I've ever seen. Directed by Naoko Yamada, The Colors Within follows Totsuko, a young Catholic schoolgirl who has a form of synesthesia where she can see people as colors, yet she's embarrassed of that quality of her and hides it from others. She becomes infatuated with Kimi, who appears to have the most beautiful color she's ever seen, and after getting acquainted with her and a male student named Rui, the three decide to form an indie band on a whim and just have fun and hang out together. One of the most prominent traits of Yamada's filmography is how she utilizes animation and cinematography to tell a story, and that carries over into this film as it is immediately obvious how beautiful this movie is. The character designs are reminiscent of the bubbly characters of Heike's Story and Garden of Remembrance, while the visual identity and cinematic language feels much closer to Liz and the Bluebird, though definitely with a larger scale of colors as opposed to Liz's muted blues. Whereas Liz's palette is in purpose of its suffocating and empty atmosphere, Colors Within is, for lack of a better word, colorful. The different shades and hues blend together to create a dazzling and soul-lifting watching experience. In fact, I'd argue this has the best use of color out of anything I watched in 2024. Along with that, Yamada's recognizable style of directing is also present in instances of leg shots and moments where characters are deliberately placed in ways where they face toward or away from the center of the screen. All that to say, the animation is beautiful. Obviously, the music is incredible as well, and like with Belle, I deliberately went to watch it dubbed so I could hear the lyrics, and while the translations don't flow as naturally as Belle, which is admittedly a high bar to clear in terms of dubs, their rough awkwardness actually contributes to the amateur nature of their band. And even though their beats and lyrics are pretty simple, they're still capable of channeling powerful emotions into their songs. And in terms of dubs, I'd say it is overall fantastic, with the main three as a particular standout. Eddie Lee gives such an adorable performance as Rui, which is surprising coming from his performance as boring-ass Lucas from Mavka. I'm glad he had his redemption arc. Kylie McNeil was the main reason I wanted to see this dubbed, as I loved her voice in Belle, and indeed, her vocals are sonically beautiful, and her voice for Kimi is completely different from her voice for Suzu, which speaks to how spectacular she is as a voice actress. But surprisingly enough, my favorite performance was from Libby Rue, who was able to match Totsuko's hilarious and exaggerated antics. That is also another contributor to how good this movie is. The characters are all around fantastic. While they are on the simple side, it's that simplicity that carries the story, making them easily identifiable, entertaining, as well as representative of different ideas, themes, and virtues. Totsuko is an incredibly interesting protagonist to follow, as I'll elaborate on in my more detailed thoughts, but on the surface, it's really interesting how her shyness concerning her synesthesia contrasts with her loud and exaggerated personality. She exudes such a wholesome energy that spreads throughout the group. Rui is also a wholesome character who is just me. My sis and I agree that Rui is literally me. I even look like him. Kimi is also a great character with how much she's idolized by her peers, but opts to drop out since school isn't working out for her, and she's encouraged by the people around her to channel her feelings into her art, which has incredible payoff in the final act. I also noticed that the three have an astoundingly effective dynamic as a band. Kimi brings the heart and soul that fuels their songs, Rui brings the technical knowledge and passion for music, and Totsuko brings her bubbly personality as a way to boost morale and support the other two. Honestly, seeing these three interact in any capacity is the most entertaining stuff I've seen in the past few years. Now, for the crowd who don't want spoilers and will back out after this spoiler-free segment, the only thing I can potentially see as a mild negative is that Totsuko's synesthesia doesn't come up that often. However, because it doesn't come up that often, that means whenever it does come up, it's supposed to be for some important reason to the narrative, which is emblematic of what the entire film is like. You could say some characters deserved more screen time, or some dynamics deserve to be more fleshed out, but none of that really matters as the movie accomplishes exactly what it wants to accomplish with literal flying colors. And even then, Totsuko's synesthesia still serves a purpose throughout the movie, which, well, okay, I'll start going in depth now and bring it up when we get there. If you want to catch this movie in theaters, I highly recommend it. You will not regret it. With that out of the way, here are my unorganized and messy, spoilerific thoughts that may change when I rewatch the movie in the future. We've seen in recent years an entourage of anime and manga that revolve around a couple of kids starting a band and making it big. In fact, I think since K-On!, coincidentally by the same director, that has always been a staple in a decent percentage of slice-of-life anime and manga. The Colors Within follows suit on that story trope, but there is something about it that is a little different from the rest. Whereas other stories of the same kind deal with these kids wanting to make it big and make a name for themselves, in The Colors Within, they just want to make music for the sake of making music, and when you get down to it, each of them have their own individual reason for forming the band. Rui is passionate about music and wants to explore composing, Kimi is using music as an outlet for her feelings and struggles, and Totsuko wants to write a song to express Kimi's colors through sound. There are no big moments or celebrations of getting a contract or landing a gig, no competitions with other bands or riling up large crowds. In fact, the crowd that the band draws in at the end is actually pretty small. There are only quiet and subtle moments of these kids just working through their emotions and figuring out how to convey them through sound and lyrics, and each and every one of these moments are incredibly effective. When Totsuko first comes up with the melody of Amen I'm Going Somewhere, as well as parts of the chorus's lyrics, that was one moment I related to immensely. The recording she shares with Kimi and Rui is rough and has her voice crack and slightly out of tune, but it still conveys what she wants the song to eventually become. The demo they create immediately after also sparks a lot of joy, and eventually the song is fantastic in the final performance. Not to mention, Totsuko having a stroke of inspiration for the song from her learning about stars and galaxies is a moment I also found compelling, as it taps into songs being able to be about, well, anything. Anything you can think of in daily life that you come across that makes you feel a certain way. Another moment I found fascinating was how Kimi came up with her own melody, but when she and Totsuko are taken out of commission, Rui takes it upon himself to evolve that melody into something new, eventually becoming their second song, Walk, which is also gorgeous. Not only does this moment speak to me as showing how art is collaborative, this and other moments in the movie say something truly special about the creative process and creating art in general. The final performance is a tour de force of animation, energy, and music, but the reason why isn't because of these incredibly complicated pieces of art or heavy pouring out of emotions. It's not like Belle, where we're experiencing an ethereal concert of someone pouring out their feelings, nor is it like Bocchi the Rock, K-On!, or Girls Band Cry, where we're pulling off sick moves to impress a crowd. In fact, during Apology Letter, Totsuko is just tapping away on the keyboard, one note at a time with 2 fingers like she's playing chopsticks. And at one point in the song, Rui is just hyping up what little crowd they have. And yet their songs hold value and meaning, being products of their own feelings that are able to reach the audience as well as force them to get up off of their feet and dance till they feel better. I'm sorry, that was unconscious. In a way, it shows that even if someone's art could be deemed amateur or simple or even a little flawed, that art still has value and ergo is able to reach people's hearts. Is it the most complex expression of that theme? No, but that's exactly the point. Even if it's probably one of the more simple examples, that simplicity enhances the themes of creativity knowing no boundaries even more. It honestly hit me in a way no other story about that subject really has before, look back included. That's probably the part of the movie that most people connected with, and I wouldn't blame them, but to me, there was another predominant part of the movie that spoke with me personally more, and is part of the reason why I love this movie a lot. I feel like I should preface this next section with 2 things. I'll be speaking religiously, which I rarely ever do, so I get if you're not a fan of that and skip this part of the video. And even though I will reveal more about myself than I probably have before, this isn't gonna be as emotional as my Belle video or my upcoming Liz analysis, especially my Liz analysis. So, I am Christian. More specifically, I am of the United Methodist Church, which if you were to put it on a political scale in relation to every other denomination, you would find it more on the liberal side, at least from the UMC churches I have been to. So you don't have to worry about me being crazy. You've seen my channel, you know what I'm like. But you can only imagine how confusing it can be sometimes given the freaking state of the world right now. Shockingly, I do not like when people who claim to be Christians, who claim to be kind and compassionate, are actually not that and turn out to be the worst and most hateful people in the world. In fact, I despise that the major reason the country I live in is crumbling down is because of those kinds of people, weaponizing God's word to commit terrible atrocities. Most of the time, it thrusts me into spirals of why I even associate myself with God anymore. But unlike others who grew up in the church who, because this was forced on them, found the strength to break off from the religion and live their own lives as they want to, because I admittedly come from a place of privilege with a family that I am forever grateful that they are as loving and progressive as they are, my faith is still something important to me that I want to retain. Instead of being something forced on me, it was something I chose to be the foundation of the kind of person I want to become. But in this day and age, and let's not kid ourselves, especially in this political climate, sticking by that is just one confusing ordeal. Which is why The Colors Within could not have come out at a better time. I felt so seen in this movie, and that's mainly because of Totsuko's entire character. Because Kimi is someone who decides that faith isn't really for her and wants to make her own decisions in life. And we don't know a whole lot about Rui's experiences with God, but the one thing we do know is that faith is incredibly important to Totsuko. She doesn't grow out of her faith by the end of the movie, she continuously taps into that part of her because it serves as the foundation of who she is as a person. Totsuko to me is one of the most inspiring protagonists I have ever seen for how much she tries and succeeds in being there for her friends and helping them through the rough bumps in their lives. I like to think that Totsuko's synesthesia is a signifier for her being able to see the beauty in the people around her, which I relate to immensely, even if I don't have synesthesia. I don't care about the, the person is Christian, but this person's not Christian crap. No, I care that the people I love are wonderful people and a lot of fun to be around and make the world a better place by being themselves. I saw myself through Totsuko in the way that she could see how troubled Kimi was and that she just needed someone to be there for her, how Rui loved doing what he was doing and how he just needed some support, and how Sister Hyoko was more kind and understanding than the other students gave her credit for. In fact, Sister Hyoko is also another character who is a positive stand-in for people of faith, but instead of reminding me of myself, she reminds me of people I used to and still look up to, being someone of faith and especially authority who doesn't force anything down anyone's throats, but understands people and even commends their efforts to be themselves and be the kindest they can be. After all, it's not Totsuko or Rui who suggested playing at the festival to Kimi, it was Sister Hyoko. But getting back to Totsuko, I also think this is why she doesn't see her own color until the end, as she needs to learn and grow through her relationships and interactions to discover that she is truly empathetic and kind, someone with a pink aura, if you will. Honestly, Totsuko feels like an example to me, the kind of person I want to become, and more specifically, the ultimate display of Christian values I want to embody. Love, kindness, goodness, gentleness, all the fruits of the Spirit intertwining and interconnecting with every action and every spoken word in our lives, embracing everyone's differences and celebrating them as different expressions of being kind to others, let alone being alive. In a time of hateful and truly terrifying Christian nationalism, this movie tells me to keep my head up and keep going in spreading kindness and love all throughout the world, more so than Belle, which is a huge freaking deal if you know me. And very quickly to wrap this section up, it's not just Totsuko that has this immense display of relatability. As I said, Kimi is a stand-in for people who grew out of the church, and in a way this movie tells you it's okay to not be a part of that. If you just remember to be kind to people, you don't have to abide by those traditions or rules. You're free to live life the way you want to. I can attest, when watching this with my friend, and especially when talking to one of the workers at the theater after watching this, the one word we used to describe this movie overall was healing. That is the biggest takeaway from this film, a truly healing experience that is able to unite people of all faiths or no faith. It is a triumph amongst every other religious movie that I won't be able to stop thinking about for a while. Speaking of healing, I'm going to close this off with a very quick thing to talk about regarding this movie. If not for the marvelous musical menagerie or the religious undertones, I would argue this movie's biggest strength is being the ultimate comfort movie. Really think about it. What is a comfort movie supposed to do? Well, make you happy. Not in the way that it provides an escapist fantasy or is hyperactive fun, but in a way that is calming and reassuring, a dose of sweet serotonin that reminds you that everything is going to be alright, which we desperately need right now. If you were to ask me what my comfort movie was before I watched this, I would have said Liz and the Bluebird by the same director. And even though that is still my favorite movie, and what I think is the best movie ever, The Colors Within has become my new comfort movie. It is the most fun I have ever had with a film, and that is because of everything I literally just talked about, the filmmaking being great, characters all around fantastic, the musical process being represented well, and setting an example for people to be kind, especially from a progressive Christian perspective. But it's also because it's just a story about 3 kids messing around in an abandoned church for an hour and change, having fun and growing as people together. The reason why this movie is so comforting is because there's no drama, there's no tense situation other than the ferry being canceled that one time, and there's no antagonist or antagonizing force to chip away at the characters' relationships or self-esteem, which was what I was so afraid would happen. More than a film that is fun to watch, this is a film about people having fun, which in turn allows us to have fun. Even with their own anxieties and insecurities, by the end, Totsuko, Kimi, and Rui are reminded by each other and the people around them that everything is going to be okay, which, despite its, as I said, simplistic execution, hits hard in a way that actually made me sob at the end. The movie understands that it doesn't need a complex or devastatingly emotional plot to be good. Just having likable characters mess around is more than enough for this movie to be one of the best of all time. It is truly a comforting and healing experience I cannot wait to see again. Well, that was a lot about The Colors Within. This video was very messy, but I truly did love talking about this movie. It was my most anticipated film for about a year, and I am incredibly happy that it met and potentially exceeded my expectations. It is easily my favorite film of 2024, and in fact, I don't usually do this for animated movies. Apart from WALL-E, my absolute favorite animated films were ones I watched roughly around the same time, at the end of 2020 and towards the beginning of 2021. I have not given a 10 out of 10 to an animated film since, because it would obviously feel like jumping the gun on something that in actuality didn't have as much of an effect on me as my top 5. But during the car ride home from the theater, I hummed and hawed over this, and given just how much this movie means to me, I decided to give it a 10 out of 10, precisely because it is an experience that I know I will never get anywhere else. This is a marvelous achievement for a film from Naoko Yamada, and I cannot wait to see what she will do next.